He's young, he's eloquent, he's brilliant. Danny Haiphong, here he is, joining us now on the Mother of All Talk Shows. It's quite a night, Danny. There's so much to talk to you about and so little time to do it. But I'd like to begin, as I did with Max Blumenthal earlier, to hear your take on where Donald Trump's presidency stands this evening.
Well, that's a great question, and thanks so much for having me back on, George. It's always a pleasure. In terms of Donald Trump's presidency, it is in crisis. It's in ruins in many respects. I was listening earlier, and the Jeffrey Epstein case never goes away. We have the New York Times putting out their information of his direct contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, which he has denied over and over and over again. And there's also the fact that Donald Trump has essentially, for like it or not, I mean, I never ascribed to much of Donald Trump's program, but he had a mandate to do many things, including end the conflict in Ukraine. And he's essentially done none of these things. And what he has done has only brought more crisis and misery for the general U.S. population, especially those who make up the working class population. This is the big problem Donald Trump faces. It's that on the one hand, he cannot seem to at all direct U.S. foreign policy in a way that reflects what he said was his vision, which was to be the peace presidency. In fact, the U.S. is mired still in West Asia. They're talking about opening a military base close to Gaza that can hold up to 10,000 U.S. personnel. There's talks of war with Venezuela. There's, of course, the conflict in Ukraine raging. And it just goes on and on and on. Threats toward Nigeria. But the big problem for Donald Trump is that all of this comes under the condition and context of a general economic crisis in the United States, high inflation. The tariffs have been a complete disaster. And Donald Trump looks weak on many fronts, including when it comes to the trade war, which he so humiliatingly lost on many different occasions since his so-called April Liberation Day. So Donald Trump's presidency is in big trouble. I happen to think that that might be by design because oftentimes U.S. presidents, as well as the majority party, like to cede some territory and ground so that their criminality, so that their policies that are hurting both the people and the planet can be blamed more so on the other party. Right now, it's very difficult to do. He still does it. He says it's Biden's war in Ukraine. He said it's Biden's fault. The economy is where it is. But the fact of the matter is that he had a mandate. He has both chambers of Congress and he has a presidency. He's not afraid of wielding its utmost, if not more power than what is granted to it. And still, we are in the crisis that we are in. So it falls at his feet. And essentially, what we're looking at is a presidency in ruins.
Well, let's break down some of those issues. We'll start with the most obvious, clear and present danger, which is a Latin Vietnam, an invasion by American soldiers of a vast territory filled with millions of highly radicalized people, all of them with guns. What could possibly go wrong? Danny, your take. Is he really going to do this?
I wouldn't be surprised if he tried. It was back in his first administration that he tried to basically implant Juan Guaido. And there was an attempt on Nicolas Maduro's life that was backed by the United States. And so he has not been afraid. His administration has never been afraid, whether it's Trump 1 or now, to back the most extreme elements of Venezuela's opposition, which also happen to be the most unpopular. So there's a lot of room here for the United States to get embroiled and bogged down in an absolute quagmire because despite the sanctions, despite the attempt to delegitimize Venezuela's leadership, its social system, the Bolivarian Revolution, as they call it, this has not actually led to any kind of success for Venezuela's right-wing opposition and U.S.-backed opposition. It's been the opposite, actually. And so, as you noted, Venezuela's population is being armed the vast majority of people in Venezuela are poor, they are working class, and they do support the government, which means they are all ready to fight essentially to the death to defend their sovereignty. And it's always been the case since Hugo Chavez came into power in the late 1990s that the military has been on the side of the government. They have not been able to turn the military. Donald Trump still hasn't been able to do it. There's rumors, there's leaks coming out saying that Donald Trump's administration is trying, the CIA is trying to do this, and it's not working. So if the United States does this, and we have many different options, but let's say they take the most extreme form, which is land strikes on Venezuela, this could be the death knell of U.S. influence in Latin America. It may be the silver lining, because right now the situation in Latin America is very divided. You have figures like Javier Milei, who are extreme libertarian, who want to see complete subservience to the U.S. and Israel and Latin America. And then you have people like Nicolas Maduro, who wants to see a sovereign, multipolar Latin America. If the U.S. attacks Venezuela and tries to invade, we are going to see a massive shift away from the Malays of the world, away from the U.S. puppets, toward a more united Latin America. And that will be the legacy of Donald Trump. Essentially, he did it in Iran when he bombed Iran after at the end of the 12-day war that he backed Israel over. And it's likely going to happen in Latin America, but it will come at the expense of Venezuelan civilians, Venezuelan people, and it will come at the expense also of the U.S.'s overall legitimacy in the world. This has really been Donald Trump's legacy so far. It's his wrecking ball that he is swinging. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did try, because we all know, and I think, George, you've been following politics for a long time. When midterm elections come, when there is a U.S. election on the way, there tends to be an attempt by the presidency, by the Oval Office, to make a kind of statement. So we should all be alert and aware of that, because this has been, for people like Marco Rubio, this has been a project long in the waiting.
Yeah, a wag the dog war, but that's only of any use if the war goes well. I think both you and I know that the chances of an invasion of Venezuela going well for the United States are close to zero. I mean, they can bomb, of course, and they might well do so. They can even kill the president, as they certainly have tried to do so in the past. But the Chavez revolution has millions of adherents and has delivered for, as you say, the very poorest people in Venezuela. The poorest people, the blackest people, the most indigenous people have all benefited, despite all the sanctions from the Bolivarian Revolution. And now they've all got weapons. I mean, Maduro is such a dictator that he's given millions of people weapons, which, if they hated him, they could turn on him. But he's confident that they'd rather fire them at the Yankees. So a wag the dog war, well, Trump would be betting everything on that. It's quite a gamble, isn't it?
It is. And your audience probably remembers, George, in 2011, when the U.S. Utilized NATO to bomb and overthrow the government of Libya. Muammar Gaddafi did a very similar thing, because Libya didn't actually have its own standing army. It was actually such a democracy. It was so decentralized. It claimed itself to be a direct democracy, that its only army was a people's army. And that is what was fighting the terrorists on the ground and was succeeding up until the bombing campaign. So all that is to say is that the United States is not looking at an easy war here. I believe that Nicolas Maduro could be assassinated. The United States, the CIA, Israel, they are good at terrorist attacks. They are good at igniting a kind of internal crisis. That could happen. But then what is the result? The result is likely to be a long, protracted, ultimately losing war that will likely unite the rest of the region, including Venezuelans, against the United States. And the consequences on the world stage, it'll be another example to the rest of the world of what happens when you defy, when you try to chart your own course in destiny of development, political, economic, and otherwise, when you assert your sovereignty. This is going to be a lesson to the rest of the world of what is likely to come, and it will move the rest of the world still more in the direction of multipolarity This has been the legacy of all U.S. presidents, arguably since 2001 when the war on terror was declared. But it accelerated dramatically under Obama, under Trump, and then Biden really lit the flame that Donald Trump now can't seem to put out and is only blowing wind onto the fire. That is, or fanning the flames. And that is what a war in Venezuela will do. It'll be a disaster. The United States, it's not the same world anymore. The United States cannot dictate terms in the same way that it could. They have to even make up rumors about Nicolas Maduro saying that he was trying to give up everything to stop a war, when all of the words that come out of his mouth are the exact opposite as he holds up Ho Chi Minh and arms the population. It will be a disaster for the U.S. It's just a matter of what kind of disaster does the Trump administration want, what can it handle, and what will be the consequences. And they will be bad. They will be bad all the way around. Any short-term gains will be met with long-term problems and crises.
How did you feel about that jihadist, that Sharia law man, not Mamdani, Jolani, sitting in the White House, getting sprayed by perfume, Trump perfume, God knows what that's like, asked how many wives he's got, because I never know with you guys, joshing around in the Oval Office, a man that not 1 year ago you would have got $10 million for turning him in.
Yeah, it's an absolute, it's just absolutely disgusting. On the one hand, there have been many that have been very critical of Vladimir Putin having a head of state meeting with Jolani. And the fact of the matter is that Russia was not the architect of regime change in Syria. The United States was. And so Russia has to play realpolitik, because that is what a government does that is trying to essentially stave away war, no matter what we might think of it and how the optics look. The United States is a completely different animal. The United States is the architect of regime change. The United States was the one, through both its vassal states in the region, Israel, and itself, backing people like Jolani. The United States had a bounty on Jolani's head. The embassy, the U.S. Embassy of Syria, all the way up until Jolani was anointed president, had that ex post saying that there was a massive bounty to capture Jolani, dead or alive. This is who Jolani was. He is a head chopper. He is somebody who has committed untold crimes, and it was all to the benefit of the empire. It was all to the benefit of the U.S. in Israel. And now he comes in as a literal head chopper, president, anointed president at the White House, treated with the utmost of just, some people called it awkward, but it was pathetic. It was, in my estimation, a spit in the face to all of those who opposed the war on Syria. Much of his base opposed the war on Syria, opposed what was happening there, opposed what is going on, the sectarian strife, the armed groups, the Al-Qaeda affiliates like Jolani, these types. And now Donald Trump is embracing them and even calling for what many people might not have been paying attention to, perhaps even a more cemented military presence for the United States in Syria as it starts to roll in the privatization wagon to strip Syria of all of its assets. This is the Syria that the United States created, and this is the Syria that now Donald Trump is embracing in the most crass and really despicable form. That was the takeaway for me, was that all of those years of supporting regime change in Syria has led to one of the most really embarrassing and despicable optics that we've seen. And this is something that Donald Trump ultimately embraces, but it's these kind of optics that actually don't do him well, that really just harm his administration. And more people are seeing what it is really all about. It's about the U.S. Maintaining and expanding its hegemony at all costs. And Jolani is simply a tool to do that, whether he has a suit or whether he is out, on the battlefield as a paid proxy of the U.S., of Saudi, of whoever it is, chopping heads and committing massacres at the behest of empire.
Although the media can be counted on. There he was in the country that suffered the terrible crime of 9/11. We're told at the hands of Al-Qaeda. Here's the deputy leader of Al-Qaeda in your country, in the White House, in the Oval Office, and everyone's forgotten 9/11. I didn't see any commentary on any of the mainstream, certainly not on the television, that held his feet to the fire over 9/11. Maybe called for an apology or something. They got none of that and didn't ask for it.
No, and this is all part of the ruse. Really, what was a massive population kind of manipulation on the part of the U.S. foreign policy establishment from the very beginning of the United States, before 9/11 even happened, had been supporting, arming through the CIA these groups. And many might remember the Soviet Afghanistan war, which the CIA was heavily arming and funding the Mujahideen there, which eventually became forces like the Jolanis of the world. So this is a historic problem. And even the one interview I saw on Fox News where he was questioned about what he felt about 9/11, what did he think about it? Even that answer just showed the defensiveness. He was trying to say that he was not involved at all. He was only 19 years old. But the problem here is that when he said that, he essentially implicated himself in being involved in operations of a very similar kind, if not that one. And this is how absolutely embarrassing it is for the United States, whether it's the corporate media trying to whitewash him or whether it's Donald Trump spraying him with, I guess, a kind of a whitewash cologne. Whatever the optics are and whatever the approach is to Jolani, like this is how embarrassing and humiliating it is. It is showing the world exactly what the U.S. foreign policy establishment does, and that is to arm, fund, train, make these groups weapons of their own foreign policy objectives, only for them often to blow back. But when they don't, when it does work out like in Syria, then they are embraced as heroes, more heroic than even their own troops, which died in the thousands because of the wars that were justified by 9/11. It's absolutely criminal, and it is something that I think many people in the United States are looking at either in disgust or they are looking at it in a way where they understand that this is not about them. The government doesn't care about them. Donald Trump doesn't care about them either. It's all about power for the tiny few at the expense of the rest. And Donald Trump is forwarding that in the most obscene ways when it comes to Jolani and that visit.